Welcome, dear subscribers and curious listeners of my channel. Movies change everything. Any adaptation of a well-known novel inevitably faces the need to cut, condense, or radically alter parts of the story. The Harry Potter series is a vivid example of this. One of the clearest cases is Order of the Phoenix. The film based on the longest book turned out to be the shortest in the series, and the cuts affected not only the plot but Harry's character itself. Today we'll recall which important traits of the book's main hero were changed or left out entirely in the movies. Enjoy the video. Number 1. The Dursleys. In the books, Harry's relationship with the Dursleys is shown in far more depth. It's made clear they're not just a cold family, but truly cruel and unpleasant people. We read about countless small and large episodes that show how hard Harry's life was in their home. In the films, this storyline is heavily simplified. Yes, the Dursleys come across as unlikable, but without the book's details, a viewer might think they're merely strict guardians, not the people who turned Harry's childhood into a constant ordeal. Number 2. Quidditch. The films show that Harry is a good Quidditch player, but miss the most important part, his genuine love for the sport. In the books, Quidditch is one of Harry's greatest passions, a moment when he feels truly happy. This is especially strong in Order of the Phoenix, where in the book Harry is banned from the team and has his broom confiscated. In the movie, this plotline is cut entirely, depriving viewers of an important emotional thread. Number 3. Pettigrew. In the books, the moment when Harry spares Peter Pettigrew's life carries enormous weight. This act creates a magical debt that Pettigrew owes Harry, which later plays a key role in the story. In the films, this event is condensed and presented without focus on its consequences. A viewer who hasn't read the books might not even realize that sparing Pettigrew was a deliberate, important choice, not just a passing detail. Number 4. Sarcasm. In the books, we often hear Harry's biting inner remarks, his unique, sarcastic humor. It's a key part of his character that makes him vivid and relatable. In the films, almost all the witty lines go to Ron. We see occasional flashes of Harry's humor, but they pale in comparison to the book version. Of course, it's difficult to convey inner thoughts on screen, but the screenwriters also don't seem to have tried to compensate with dialogue. Number 5. Dobby. In the books, Dobby and Harry share a genuine friendship. The house elf helped Harry more than once, and Harry repaid him with gifts and kindness. Their bond showed that Harry had a good heart and valued loyalty. In the films, Dobby appears far less often. This was likely due to the cost of CGI, but as a result, viewers underestimate how important he was to Harry. Moreover, Hermione and Ron's interactions with Dobby are cut entirely, which makes their meeting in the later films feel odd and unnatural. Number 6. Hermione. In the books, there is not even a hint of romantic feelings between Harry and Hermione. Their relationship has always been friendly, almost like brother and sister. However, in the films there are occasional moments of subtle romantic tension, especially in the first part of Deathly Hallows. This may be due to early ideas by J.K. Rowling to pair these characters, but the book version contains no such undertones. Number 7. Loneliness. In the final part of Deathly Hallows, Harry walks into the Forbidden Forest alone, a moment filled with heavy inner monologue, despair, and acceptance. It's one of the most powerful scenes in the entire series. In the movie, however, he hugs Ron and Hermione before leaving. While touching, this choice strips the moment of the depth of personal sacrifice. The sense of Harry's inner solitude simply doesn't come through. Number 8. Studies and talent in defense. In the books, Harry earns his skill in defense the hard way. Learning the Patronus charm in Prisoner of Azkaban takes weeks of failure. Each attempt leaves him gasping, the memory of Dementors chilling his bones. Lupin's calm voice urges him on, think of something happy. Even then, the first silver shapes are wisps, fading before they take form. When the stag finally bursts from his wand, it's a triumph born of persistence, not destiny. His later ability to teach the Patronus to members of Dumbledore's army comes from that same grit, hours of trial, error, and determination. The films shorten this into a few neat shots, making it seem as if Harry simply has the gift. His victories in defense look effortless, as though being the chosen one came with instant mastery. But the Harry in the books isn't a prodigy without work. He's a boy who stays after class, who practices until his hands shake, who refuses to stop until he can protect himself and others. Without that struggle, we lose the sense that his power comes not from prophecy, but from relentless effort. Number 9, occlumency and connection to Voldemort. In the books, occlumency lessons with Snape are a constant battle. Harry walks into the office dreading the sharp voice, the curt orders, the sting of failure. "Clear your mind, Potter!" Snape barks before slamming into Harry's thoughts with legilimency. Harry's memories spill out, embarrassing moments, private fears, while Snape looks on with cold detachment. The sessions leave Harry sweaty, humiliated and furious, but he keeps coming back because he knows the cost of failure is Voldemort inside his head. The struggle is more than physical. Each failed lesson deepens Harry's fear that Voldemort can use him as a weapon. In Order of the Phoenix, after he dreams of the attack on Mr. Weasley, the urgency grows. He tries to practice on his own, but it's exhausting. The tension between him and Snape worsens, fueled by mutual dislike, yet the training forces them into close, hostile proximity. The danger feels immediate. One slip, and the Dark Lord will see everything. The films condense this into a handful of short scenes. We see flashes of training, a quick exchange of insults, and then the plot moves on. The daily grind, the mounting frustration, the fear of becoming Voldemort's puppet, those threads vanish. On screen, the connection looks more like an occasional vision than a constant threat. The book, Harry is a boy carrying a ticking bomb in his mind. The movie, Harry seems only briefly disturbed by it. That difference robs the story of a layer of tension that once made every night feel dangerous. Number 10. Memory of his parents and James's image. In the books, Harry's image of his father changes in a single, painful moment. In Order of the Phoenix, he dives into Snape's worst memory and sees James at 15 lounging by the Black Lake. James hexes Severus for fun, his friends laughing. "Leave him alone!" a young Lily Evans shouts. Harry's stomach twists. The father he imagined, a noble, flawless hero, looks more like a bully. He was as bad as Snape, maybe worse, Harry thinks, the words stinging. This discovery forces Harry to grow. He wrestles with the idea that people he loves can have ugly sides. In Half-Blood Prince, he asks Lupin about James, hoping for reassurance, and Lupin admits his friend could be arrogant. But Lupin also explains that James matured, especially after Lily came into his life. Harry learns to hold both truths at once. His father was imperfect, but he was also brave, loyal, and capable of change. The films soften this blow. In Order of the Phoenix, the memory scene is brief. We see James teasing Snape, but the humiliation is toned down and Harry's reaction fades quickly. There's no lingering conflict, no long conversations with Lupin or Sirius about what James was really like. Movie James remains largely a symbol, a smiling young man in photographs, a heroic figure who died protecting his family. By skipping the inner struggle, the films miss a vital piece of Harry's maturity. In the books, accepting James's flaws helps Harry understand that heroism isn't about being perfect. It's about growing, choosing better, and standing by those you love. That lesson shapes the man he becomes, but on screen, it slips quietly into the shadows. Number 11. Savior at any cost and consequences. In the books, saving people is never free for Harry. In Order of the Phoenix, his desperate attempt to rescue Sirius from the Department of Mysteries ends in disaster. The trap closes, the Death Eaters surround them, and Sirius falls through the veil. Harry's grief is crushing. "It's my fault," he whispers, numb and shaking. That one choice leaves him with a wound that never fully heals. The victory, if it can be called that, comes at a terrible cost. The same pattern appears in Goblet of Fire. When Cedric dies in the graveyard, Harry is haunted by the fact that he insisted they take the Triwizard Cup together. "Kill the spare," Voldemort ordered, and Cedric fell. Harry blames himself, replaying that moment over and over. These mistakes are not brushed aside, they shape him. They make him more cautious, more aware that every act of heroism can take something precious away. The films rarely dwell on this aftermath. Cedric's death is sad, but the guilt that gnaws at Harry in the books barely surfaces on screen. Sirius's death in the movie is quick, followed by a short burst of anger, and then the story moves forward. The long months of grief, the sleepless nights, the tension with his friends, these are cut or compressed. The result is a version of Harry who recovers too easily, as if heroism leaves no scars. Without the visible weight of these consequences, film Harry seems almost invulnerable. But in the books, his pain is part of what makes him heroic. He doesn't keep saving people because it's easy. He does it knowing exactly how much it can hurt. That choice, made again and again despite the cost, is what makes him more than just a cinematic action hero. It makes him real. Number 12. Romance with Ginny. In the books, Harry's feelings for Ginny sneak up on him. In Half-Blood Prince, he notices the way she laughs at something Dean says, and a sharp, unfamiliar twist grips his stomach. It was as though a monster inside his chest was roaring with jealousy, Rowling writes. He finds himself watching her in the common room, feeling awkward when she catches his eye. These moments aren't grand gestures. They're the quiet, embarrassing signs of a boy falling in love. Their relationship grows through shared experiences. Ginny fights alongside him in the Department of Mysteries. She speaks her mind without fear, sometimes even challenging him. He admires her skill in Quidditch, her courage, her humour. When they finally kiss after the Gryffindor victory, it's the culmination of months of glances, conversations, and unspoken feelings. The reader feels the build-up, and it feels real. The films skip much of this slow burn. By the time they share their first kiss in Half-Blood Prince on screen, there's little sense of the journey that brought them there. Gone are the teasing exchanges, the Quidditch matches, the moments of jealousy. Movie Ginny is quieter. Her connection with Harry understated to the point of almost disappearing until the plot needs it. Without the gradual warmth of their book relationship, Harry's emotional life feels narrower in the films. In the books, loving Ginny shows his softness, his capacity to care deeply for someone beyond the fight against Voldemort. That ability to love is what sets him apart from the Dark Lord, and without it, the on-screen Harry loses a piece of what makes his victory truly powerful. Number 13. Inner Doubts. Harry's doubts run like a quiet current beneath the surface of every book. In Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, after Dumbledore shows him memories of Voldemort's past, Harry lies awake in the dormitory, staring at the ceiling. What if Dumbledore is wrong? What if I'm not the one? The thought eats at him. He isn't picturing himself as a fearless hero in that moment. He's a boy who wonders if he's good enough or if someone else would do better. That fear doesn't vanish in a single conversation. It lingers, shaping his choices. In the Deathly Hallows, his uncertainty grows heavier. Wandering through forests with Ron and Hermione, he feels the mission slipping away. The Horcrux around his neck whispers failure. He second-guesses every plan, wondering if he's leading them into disaster. Was this what Dumbledore meant for me to do, or am I just lost? He thinks in the middle of the night. These doubts make him fragile, but also human, someone who has to fight not only an enemy, but his own fear of being unworthy. The films give us a different Harry. On screen, he moves with steady purpose, almost never voicing his inner hesitation. Even in moments where the books show him mentally spiraling, like the tense days before the Battle of Hogwarts, film Harry keeps a composed face. It's cinematic, yes, but it strips away the anxious questions that define him in the novels. We see a leader, but not the boy lying awake wondering if he can be one. That loss changes how we understand him. In the books, his courage is sharpened by doubt. He acts despite fear, not without it. In the films, the absence of that inner struggle makes bravery look effortless, as if Harry was born ready to face Voldemort. But the truth on the page is different. Every step forward is a choice against uncertainty, and that choice is what makes his victories mean something. Number 14, anger and stubbornness. Harry was never meant to be a perfect, flawless hero. In Order of the Phoenix, his anger spills over like a kettle that's been left too long on the stove. He snaps at Ron and Hermione in the common room, his voice sharp with frustration. He storms out of conversations with them, convinced they're keeping things from him. When Dumbledore avoids his gaze, Harry's temper flares. "Look at me!" he shouts in the headmaster's office, the words echoing against the stone walls. In that moment, he isn't the calm, chosen one of the films. He's a hurt, furious teenager who feels abandoned. These moments in the books are not random outbursts. They are the product of months of stress, isolation, and the Ministry's smear campaign against him. He's 15, burdened with knowledge no one else can understand, and the weight crushes his patience. Rowling doesn't shy away from showing this side of him. It makes Harry real. He's brave, yes, but he's also flawed, stubborn, and deeply human. The films choose a softer approach. In Order of the Phoenix, the movie, Harry is serious, even brooding, but his rages are trimmed down. The scene in Dumbledore's office is calmer, the fury diluted. There's no repeated shouting at his friends, no heated arguments that leave the air thick with tension. Without these edges, movie Harry feels more controlled, more acceptable, but less alive. By removing his roughest moments, the films lose something vital. The Harry of the books isn't just fighting Voldemort, he's fighting himself, his temper, his pride. His stubborn streak is what makes him defy Umbridge, form Dumbledore's army, and walk into danger when others hesitate. But it's also what drives him to say things he regrets, to push away the people he loves. That contradiction is part of what makes him unforgettable on the page, even if it's softened on the screen. Number 15, relationship with Snape. In the original books, Harry's feelings towards Severus Snape are a constant storm, a mixture of sharp resentment and persistent curiosity. From the very first meeting in Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, Snape's cold sarcasm and his pointed favoritism towards Slytherins leave Harry wary and offended. Yet even in those moments of anger, Harry cannot entirely look away. Rowling lets us into his mind, where irritation is always laced with an unwilling fascination. He notices Snape's every expression, the unusual glint in his black eyes, the way his robes seem to billow without wind. Harry wonders why this professor singles him out for such contempt. Mystery is planted early, and it never truly leaves. In The Prisoner of Azkaban, that complexity deepens. Harry learns that Snape has a personal history with his father, James Potter, one that's steeped in bitterness. But instead of simply rejecting Snape as a villain, Harry starts to connect dots, however reluctantly. When he overhears the conversation between Snape, Fudge, and Hagrid about Sirius Black, he realizes Snape's motivations are not simple cruelty, but a web of grudges, fears, and perhaps even misguided loyalty. The text makes it clear Snape's thin face was full of hatred, but there was fear there too. This duality in Snape keeps Harry from reducing him to a caricature. Even in hating him, Harry wants to understand what drives him. The turning point in the books often comes in The Order of the Phoenix. In those chapters, Harry experiences Snape as a reluctant teacher during occlumency lessons. The sessions are brutal, with Snape delving into Harry's most private memories without mercy. But then Harry glimpses Snape's own childhood through a crack in the pensive, a young boy, isolated, humiliated, desperate for control in a chaotic world. Rowling doesn't excuse Snape's cruelty, but she invites us, through Harry's reluctant eyes, to see that cruelty as a shield for wounds that never healed. In that moment, Harry feels a confusion of anger and pity toward the man. This emotional complexity is essential to their relationship. By contrast, the films strip away much of that layered build-up. From the first movie to the sixth, Snape is largely presented as a one-dimensional obstacle, the sneering black-clad figure standing between Harry and his goals. Alan Rickman's commanding presence certainly adds gravitas, but the script often reduces his role to short bursts of sarcastic put-downs and suspicious glares. The tension between Harry and Snape becomes more of a visual trope than a psychological puzzle. We see the animosity, but the subtle undercurrents, the moments where Harry wrestles with pity, empathy, or uncertainty, rarely make it to the screen. Take, for example, the way the films handle the occlumency lessons in The Order of the Phoenix. In the book, these lessons are painful, but rich with subtext. Harry's mind is laid bare, and in turn, he is given a raw, involuntary look into Snape's own suffering. It's a critical moment of shared vulnerability, one that reshapes Harry's perception. In the movie, however, this exchange is condensed to a few sharp edits and an abrupt intrusion into Snape's memory. The sense of discovery, Harry realizing that his tormentor was once a victim, is almost entirely lost. Without this, the viewer misses a cornerstone of their evolving dynamic. The books also let Harry's suspicion towards Snape coexist with grudging respect. In The Half-Blood Prince, Harry cannot deny Snape's formidable skills in magic, potions, and even defense. He notes that Snape's instructions in class, when not colored by bias, are precise and effective. There is a scene in the book where Harry follows Snape's directions in making a potion and produces the best result in the class, only for Snape to give him the lowest possible grade. It's infuriating, but it also underscores Snape's mastery of the craft. This grudging recognition forms part of Harry's complicated feelings, the idea that someone can be both detestable in behavior and admirable in talent. The films, however, largely avoid showing Harry acknowledging Snape's expertise until the very end, thereby flattening their interactions into an unbroken chain of hostility. Even in moments of high tension, the novels preserve shades of moral ambiguity. In the Deathly Hallows, when Snape is killed by Nagini, Harry's initial reaction is not triumph, but shock, then an urgent need to hear his final words. Rowling writes, "A terrible, choking, rattling noise filled the air. Snape was drowning in his own blood." The raw humanity of that scene, Harry kneeling beside a dying man he has loathed for years, carries weight precisely because the reader has been allowed to see that hatred coexists with curiosity and a grudging, reluctant bond. By the time Harry enters the pensive to view Snape's memories, we understand why this moment changes everything for him. The films, in their brisker pace, make the change feel abrupt, almost as if Harry's perception shifts entirely in one scene. Another loss in the film portrayal is how Harry's understanding of Snape is shaped by other characters' testimonies. In the books, Lupin, Sirius, Dumbledore, and even Phineas Nigellus offer perspectives that challenge Harry's assumptions. Lupin's quiet warning about Snape's bravery, Dumbledore's insistence on his loyalty despite appearances, these moments force Harry to reevaluate. Without these layered conversations, the audience of the films receives fewer prompts to see beyond Snape's antagonism. The narrative becomes more about an inevitable reveal than a gradual peeling away of false impressions. Number 16, suspicious nature. In the books, Harry's suspicion is not just a passing thought, it is one of his defining survival tools. In Philosopher's Stone, from the moment he notices Professor Quirrell's twitchy behavior and strange turban, Harry's mind starts building quiet theories. He sees patterns others dismiss. After the broom incident during the first Quidditch match, he recalls how Snape was looking straight at him and muttering under his breath. "Snape's jinxing my broom!" he tells Hermione and Ron in the novel, convinced there is a hidden hand behind the danger. He is wrong about the culprit, but this suspicion drives him to investigate, to sneak into the library's restricted section, and to watch people closely. This detective-like instinct is woven into his every move in the books, making the reader follow him not just through the events but through his reasoning. When the Chamber of Secrets is opened, Harry once again sees shadows where others see coincidences. In the book, after hearing the voice in the walls, he becomes convinced that Draco Malfoy might be the heir of Slytherin. The suspicion is not based on hard evidence, but on a mix of past prejudice, Malfoy's smug attitude, and circumstantial hints. The key here is that Harry acts on this suspicion. He and Ron brew Polyjuice Potion, break into the Slytherin common room, and question Draco directly. The investigation fails to confirm anything, but the process shows a boy willing to take risks to confirm or disprove his theories. In the film, this sequence is compressed into a flashy infiltration scene without much build-up of Harry's mental process, losing the sense that he is actively piecing the puzzle together. Harry's suspicion often makes him wrong, yet those mistakes are part of what makes him human. In Prisoner of Azkaban, he becomes convinced that Sirius Black is a murderous traitor who sold his parents to Voldemort. Every scrap of overheard conversation reinforces this belief. When he hears Cornelius Fudge in the Three Broomsticks say, "Black was and remains a supporter of you-know-who," the thought solidifies. He imagines Black's betrayal, the laughter after the Potter's murder. He keeps this belief until the shattering confrontation in the Shrieking Shack. In the book, the moment he realizes the truth is not just a plot twist, it's the emotional collapse of a carefully built suspicion. The films touch the surface of this turn, but skip much of the paranoia and inner tension that makes the reveal so powerful. Even in smaller moments, the books show Harry scanning faces and words for hidden motives. In Goblet of Fire, his suspicion is sharpened into something closer to constant vigilance. When his name comes out of the goblet, he immediately starts thinking about who could have done it and why. He wonders about Karkaroff's shifty glances, considers the possibility of Snape's interference, and even questions Dumbledore's judgment. "Who put your name in the Goblet of Fire, Harry?" Dumbledore asks in the book, and Harry's mind is already running through the roster of possible enemies. The tension here is built from his determination to uncover the truth before the tournament can claim him. The film presents him more as a boy bewildered by events, rather than a young man mentally probing every shadow for an answer. In Order of the Phoenix, suspicion becomes both a strength and a burden. Harry distrusts Dolores Umbridge from the first moment she speaks in her simpering, poisonous voice. He notices her smile never reaches her eyes, that her words are soaked in contempt for him and for Dumbledore. His suspicion drives him to start Dumbledore's army, to seek alternative ways to learn defense against the dark arts. But he also suspects others, sometimes without justification, like when he thinks Cho Chang might be feeding information to Umbridge after Marietta Edgecombe's betrayal. In the novel, this tension between trust and doubt deepens his relationships and sometimes strains them. The film softens or removes much of this interpersonal suspicion, focusing instead on external rebellion. One of the most telling examples of Harry's investigative suspicion is in Half-Blood Prince. Convinced Draco Malfoy has taken the dark mark, Harry watches him constantly, notes his absences, and connects them to suspicious events. He hides behind bookshelves in Borgin and Burke's to eavesdrop, sneaks after him under the invisibility cloak, and pieces together a theory involving vanishing cabinets. "I know I'm right," he tells himself in the book, even when Ron and Hermione doubt him. The novel makes this a slow-burn subplot, with Harry gathering details like a detective, building a case. In the film, this is reduced to a few glances and a vague sense of unease, stripping away the meticulousness that shows Harry's mind at work. Suspicion also keeps him alive in Deathly Hallows. When they infiltrate the Ministry, Harry immediately suspects that the sudden presence of Dementors near Umbridge's office is not random. He notices the way she clutches Mad-Eye Moody's eye like a trophy and deduces she is hiding something darker than her usual cruelty. Later, when they meet Griphook and Ollivander, Harry weighs every word for hidden meaning, suspecting that the goblin's help comes with dangerous conditions. In the book, this habit of constantly evaluating motives is part of how he navigates the dangerous landscape of the war. The films often shift these moments into bursts of action without giving the audience access to his careful, sometimes paranoid thought process. What makes Harry's suspicion compelling in the books is how it shapes the pacing. Each time he senses someone is lying or hiding something, the story slows to let him gather clues, debate with friends, and decide on his next move. This gives the reader the feeling of working alongside him, testing theories, and waiting for the truth to emerge. Without this, the films turn many of these arcs into linear chases, where Harry reacts to revelations rather than digging them out himself. The result is a hero who feels more passive on screen, even in moments when the book version is at his sharpest. Number 17. Leadership qualities. In J.K. Rowling's books, the shift in Harry's character from a reactive boy to a proactive leader becomes strikingly clear in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. It is not just about surviving or following Dumbledore's orders anymore. It is about taking responsibility for others. One of the most telling moments in the book is when Harry decides to form Dumbledore's army. He does not stumble into it by accident. The idea begins as a spark from Hermione, but it becomes Harry's mission because he feels the urgency. With Dolores Umbridge sabotaging any real defense against the dark arts education, Harry steps into a role he was never officially given. He is not simply the boy who lived anymore. He is a teacher, an organizer, and a source of courage for students who are frightened and demoralized. The novel paints these moments with a rich, almost intimate focus on Harry's thoughts and choices. When he stands before the group in the room of requirement for the first time, Rowling writes, Harry had never taught anything before, but he knew more about defending himself than anyone in the room. This is not a boy drifting through destiny. This is someone who actively shapes the outcome. The training sessions are filled with his strategic thinking, his patience in explaining spells, and his quiet encouragement to students like Neville Longbottom, who blossoms under his guidance. These scenes are not just about magic. They are about leadership, forged through empathy and shared struggle. In the films, these leadership qualities are shown, but only in glimpses. The Dumbledore's army sequences in Order of the Phoenix are condensed into a montage. We see Harry demonstrating spells, the students practicing, and a brief moment of camaraderie. But the emotional weight of Harry's decision to teach is mostly absent. In the books, the DA is weeks of hard work, planning, and personal investment. In the movie, it feels like a brief side activity before the main plot resumes. Without the build-up, it becomes easy for a viewer to believe Harry is simply reacting to events rather than steering them. Another overlooked detail in the film adaptation is how Harry's leadership is tested. In the book, when news spreads that Marietta Edgecombe has betrayed the DA, Harry does not dissolve into chaos. He reacts swiftly, coordinating with Hermione to handle the fallout and to protect the rest of the group. It shows his ability to think under pressure and prioritize the safety of others over his own anger. The movie barely touches this. Without that scene, Harry's ability to manage betrayal and keep a team together remains unexplored on screen. The books also present Harry as a leader who does not seek authority for glory. His decision to teach is reluctant at first. He questions whether anyone will listen to him, worries about the risk, and struggles with self-doubt. Yet, when faced with the alternative of inaction, he chooses to act. This trait comes through when he tells the group in the book, "We've got to be able to defend ourselves. If we don't learn, we'll be easy prey." It is a simple statement, but it carries the weight of responsibility. In the film, this nuance is lost, replaced by a quicker transition into the DA's activities without letting the audience feel the gravity of the choice. By the time Half-Blood Prince begins, the book version of Harry is already operating with a leader's mindset. Even outside the DA, he takes charge of situations instinctively. During the battle at the Astronomy Tower, he coordinates with his friends under extreme danger, thinking about where to position them and how to keep them alive. Rowling's writing makes it clear that Harry's leadership is no accident. It has been honed through years of being forced to act when no one else could. In the film, that battle is reimagined so heavily that this aspect all but disappears. Instead of Harry leading his friends, he is more of an observer to Dumbledore's final moments. The peak of Harry's leadership arc in the books arguably arrives in Deathly Hallows when he, Ron, and Hermione operate without adult guidance for months. This is leadership in its rawest form, navigating unknown territory, making strategic decisions about Horcrux hunting, and keeping the group's morale intact despite hunger, danger, and hopelessness. In the text, his choices are not always perfect, but they are deliberate. He weighs risks, listens to his friends, and takes responsibility for mistakes. When the films adapt these parts, they keep the major events, but trim away much of the deliberation and internal struggle. The result is a Harry who appears to be simply swept along by the plot rather than one who shapes it with constant decision-making. One of the most compelling examples from the book occurs during the Battle of Hogwarts. When Voldemort demands Harry surrender himself, the book gives us a leader who understands the stakes and acts with calm resolve. He moves quietly among his friends, offering comfort and giving instructions without revealing his true plan. This level of composed decision-making under pressure is what cements Harry as more than a survivor. He is a commander in spirit, if not in title. The film captures the self-sacrifice, but not the same sense of Harry as the guiding presence holding the resistance together in its final hours. Even within smaller moments, the books consistently portray Harry as someone who influences others' courage. When Neville volunteers to fight in Deathly Hallows, it is partly because Harry has modelled bravery and loyalty for years. In the text, Neville tells him, "We're all going to keep fighting, Harry. You taught us that." This is an explicit acknowledgement of Harry's role as a leader and mentor. In the films, this kind of recognition is more subtle, if present at all, which weakens the connection between Harry's earlier DA work and the loyalty shown to him later. Number 18, attitude towards money. In J.K. Rowling's books, Harry's relationship with money is one of the most understated yet telling aspects of his character. The first time the reader sees him open his vault at Gringotts in Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, it is described as heaped with gold coins, silver, and bronze in shining piles. For a boy who had lived in a cupboard under the stairs and been dressed in Dudley's cast-offs, this moment could have been a turning point toward greed. Yet Harry does not fall into the trap of self-indulgence. His very first significant use of that fortune is not to buy expensive clothes or rare magical trinkets for himself, but to purchase a generous selection of treats from the trolley for Ron Weasley, a boy he had just met on the train. That choice set the tone for how he would treat money, a means to bring joy to others rather than a tool for vanity. This generosity blooms even more clearly in Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. When Harry wins 1,000 galleons in the Triwizard Tournament, the prize is more money than most Hogwarts students could dream of. Instead of keeping it for himself, he forces it upon Fred and George Weasley to help them start their joke shop, saying it's a start-up fund, don't tell your mum. It is an act born from loyalty, admiration, and a desire to give his friends a chance to succeed. In the books, this moment is written with a kind of quiet finality. Harry doesn't hesitate, doesn't calculate, doesn't look back. For him, money's value comes from the good it can do for people he cares about, not from its power to elevate his own status. One of the subtler threads running through the books is how Harry refuses to use money as a shield from discomfort or difficulty. He never asks for special privileges because he can afford them, nor does he flaunt his wealth in any way. When he stays at the Burrow, he eats the same meals and sleeps in the same cramped rooms as the Weasley children, never offering to contribute in a way that would embarrass them. It is a sign of deep emotional intelligence. He understands instinctively that some gifts, if given the wrong way, can feel like charity rather than kindness. His spending is always thoughtful, targeted, and designed to lift people up without making them feel small. In the same vein, Harry's choice of possessions reflects his lack of vanity. His firebolt broomstick, while an expensive and coveted item, is a gift from Sirius Black, not something he bought for himself. He wears plain clothing and never invests in jewelry, accessories, or other signs of wealth. Even his Quidditch robes are standard school issue, not personalized with fancy stitching or embellishments. The books make it clear that Harry's sense of identity is not tied to material things, which is remarkable given how dramatically his financial situation changes from the start of the series to the end. However, the films almost entirely strip this dimension from his character. While they faithfully recreate moments of magical adventure and emotional conflict, they rarely, if ever, linger on how Harry uses his wealth to benefit others. The trolley scene on the Hogwarts Express is reduced to a light moment of him buying snacks for himself and Ron, without the deeper sense of generosity the book conveys. The scene with Fred and George's startup fund, arguably one of the most important illustrations of Harry's values, never appears at all. As a result, film audiences never see the magnitude of what it meant for him to give away his entire tournament prize without hesitation. This omission flattens an important part of his moral landscape. In the books, Harry's attitude toward money sets him apart from characters like Draco Malfoy, who uses his family's wealth as a weapon, and even from more neutral characters who find security or pride in their possessions. Harry's wealth is quiet, invisible, and unexploited. By not including these moments in the films, the adaptation subtly shifts his character toward a more generic, heroic archetype: brave, loyal, determined, but less textured. The absence of these financial choices means film viewers lose a key way of understanding his humility. Even more, the films miss the emotional resonance of Harry's giving. In Goblet of Fire, when he gives the Triwizard winnings to the twins, it is not just a generous gesture, it is a defiant act against the darkness closing in on their world. The war is coming, fear is spreading, and Harry chooses to plant something joyful, a joke shop, in the middle of it all. That decision carries weight. It tells the reader that Harry believes in the power of laughter and in supporting the dreams of those who stand with him. Without this moment on screen, the viewer never gets to feel that spark of hope he consciously fuels for others. The same is true for smaller acts, such as his Christmas gifts to Ron and Hermione. In Chamber of Secrets, he buys Ron a Chudley Cannon's Quidditch set and Hermione a luxury quill, both chosen with care and thoughtfulness. The narrative doesn't dwell on the cost but on the intention, on how Harry notices what would make each friend happiest. These moments speak volumes about how he observes the people around him, about how his generosity is rooted in understanding their passions and needs. In the films, Christmas gift-giving is rarely shown, and when it is, it becomes a background detail rather than a meaningful exchange. Rowling also uses Harry's money habits to draw a line between survival and excess. In Order of the Phoenix, despite the stress and the brewing war, Harry never dips into his fortune for frivolous comforts. He doesn't hire private tutors, doesn't buy protective charms beyond what's necessary, and doesn't escape into luxuries to numb his anxieties. Instead, his spending is entirely relational, about supporting others, not insulating himself. This quiet discipline is part of what keeps him grounded, a boy still in touch with the cupboard under the stairs, no matter how much gold lies in his vault. In contrast, the cinematic Harry moves through the story with almost no visible connection to money at all. It's as though his Gringotts vault ceases to exist after the first film. Without scenes of him choosing how to spend, or not spend, his wealth, the audience loses the thread of how he navigates privilege. This absence erases one of the more relatable aspects of his character, the balancing act between having more than you need and remaining untouched by it. Viewers never get to see that his moral compass extends into practical, everyday decisions. The decision to downplay this side of Harry in the films might have been made for pacing or focus, but it comes at a cost. Removing the scenes where he actively uses his resources for others lessens the impact of his victories. In the books, defeating Voldemort is not the only way he changes the world. He also changes it in small, personal ways, through kindness, backed by tangible support. The films, by skipping these smaller victories, present a hero defined almost entirely by battle and prophecy. One could argue that this generosity is part of what keeps Harry human amid the escalating stakes of the series. In Half-Blood Prince, when he inherits all of Sirius's possessions, including 12 Grimmauld Place and Creature, he treats the house elf not as property but as an individual worthy of respect. He even gives Creature gifts, such as a locket and better clothing, actions that parallel his financial kindness to his human friends. These moments show that his view of wealth extends beyond money. It's about what you give to improve someone's life. None of this nuance appears in the films, where Creature's arc is compressed and stripped of Harry's personal gestures. By the time Deathly Hallows arrives, Harry's wealth has been almost entirely redistributed in ways that serve his values. He has funded a business, given countless gifts, and never once used his money to gain advantage over others. This is a quiet but profound rejection of the idea that wealth should be hoarded or used for status. It is, in a way, another rebellion against the kind of world Voldemort is trying to build, one where power is concentrated and used to dominate. In the absence of this thread, film Harry's rebellion becomes purely about defeating a villain, not about modeling a different kind of life. Ultimately, this change between page and screen doesn't just remove charming side details, it reshapes the audience's understanding of who Harry is. In the books, his attitude toward money is a constant, gentle reminder that heroism isn't only about grand gestures and climactic battles. It's about the small, consistent choices to use what you have to make someone else's life better. The films, by skipping those choices, offer a flatter version of him, still brave, still selfless in danger, but missing that everyday generosity that made him so much more than a boy who lived. Number 19. Painful Memories of Sirius. The death of Sirius Black in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix is one of the defining tragedies of the book series, shaping Harry in ways that resonate far beyond the walls of the Department of Mysteries. In the book, J.K. Rowling allows the aftermath to linger, letting grief settle like a heavy fog over Harry's every thought and action. He does not simply cry and move on, he breaks quietly and persistently. The reader is pulled into his mind where self-blame claws at him in unrelenting cycles. It was all his fault, the narration insists through Harry's thoughts, an echo that follows him through the pages. In contrast, the films present this moment as a sharp wound, sudden and dramatic, but they do not carry the infection of grief into the days and weeks that follow. The camera moves on even if Harry's heart has not. In the book, Harry's internal monologue becomes a battlefield. After the duel in the Ministry of Magic, his thoughts replay the scene over and over, Sirius laughing as he duels Bellatrix Lestrange, then falling backward through the veil. There is no closure. He did not want to think about Sirius, Rowling writes, yet the truth is that he cannot stop. Each flash of memory is laced with the idea that Sirius died because Harry believed a false vision planted by Voldemort. The guilt is suffocating, not just because of the loss, but because Harry's own decision to rush to the Ministry against warnings feels like the trigger. In the film, this intricate knot of emotion is compressed into a few seconds of Harry screaming, restrained by Lupin. The moment is powerful visually, but the inner storm is left unexplored. The book shows how grief transforms Harry's behavior in ways both subtle and explosive. After Sirius's death, he lashes out at Dumbledore in the headmaster's office, shattering instruments in a fit of rage. "You don't care," he shouts in the book. The the force of his voice almost physical on the page. This scene is one of the rare glimpses where Harry's pain is too large to be contained. The films keep a version of this confrontation, but trim it down, softening the explosion into something more controlled. Without the slow build of Harry's guilt and self-recrimination, the scene loses the sense that this is the breaking point of a boy pushed beyond what he can bear. Rowling continues to weave Sirius into the narrative long after his death. In Half-Blood Prince, Sirius is still present in Harry's thoughts, surfacing at unexpected moments. When Dumbledore visits Harry at the Dursleys, Harry thinks bitterly of the house at Grimmauld Place, now his by inheritance, and the fact that he would trade every brick of it to have Sirius alive again. The will and the house elf creature become tangible reminders of Sirius's absence. Harry's discomfort in that house, his complicated feelings about its oppressive walls, all stem from the fact that it is both a gift from Sirius and a reminder of where Sirius felt trapped. In the films, these threads are barely touched, making the weight of Sirius's absence far lighter for the viewer. One of the most poignant details in the book is how Harry clings to the thought of Sirius's laugh. Rowling writes of Harry hearing that bark-like laugh in his mind and feeling the sting of loss sharpen. This auditory memory is more than nostalgia. It is the sound of freedom, of someone who saw Harry not as the boy who lived, but as family. In the book, when Harry encounters something that might have made Sirius laugh, he feels both joy and pain in equal measure. The films skip over this intimate sensory memory, focusing instead on visual cues, which makes the emotional texture flatter and less personal. The narrative in the book makes Sirius's death part of Harry's identity moving forward. In Half-Blood Prince, his decision-making is shaped by the fear of repeating the same mistake. He becomes more cautious about rushing into danger, even if his instincts push him forward. He tries to listen more carefully, though impatience still runs in his blood. The shadow of Sirius serves as a quiet warning in the back of his mind, yet the films rarely draw this connection. Movie Harry moves into the next school year without the clear sense that this loss has altered the way he sees the world. Another striking difference is how the book allows other characters to become mirrors for Harry's grief. Lupin's quiet sorrow, Tonks's visible depression, even Creature's bitter muttering, all of these secondary reactions remind the reader that Sirius's absence is a wound to many. Harry sees himself reflected in their pain, and it reinforces that Sirius was more than a personal comfort. He was a fighter in the Order, a link to the Marauders, and the last piece of family Harry felt he could truly claim. In the films, these collective ripples are largely absent, reducing Sirius's death to a single, dramatic note rather than an ongoing chord. Harry's coping mechanisms in the book are flawed and telling. He avoids talking about Sirius unless forced. He buries himself in Quidditch, in classes, in chasing clues about Malfoy's activities, anything to avoid staring at the truth too long. When he does think of Sirius, it is often in moments when his guard is down, such as when he sees Buckbeak, renamed Witherwings, at Grimmauld Place. Rowling shows how the sight of the hippogriff hits Harry like a punch to the chest, because Buckbeak is one of the last living connections to Sirius. The films never use Buckbeak in this way, missing an opportunity to show grief woven into everyday moments. Even Harry's relationship with Dumbledore shifts in the wake of Sirius's death. In the book, Harry is colder, more distrustful at first, because he believes that Dumbledore's secrecy contributed to the tragedy. This tension adds layers to their interactions throughout Half-Blood Prince, making their eventual reconnection more meaningful. In the films, this tension is muted, and the complexity of rebuilding trust after loss is brushed aside. The result is that the mentor-student bond feels less tested, less forged in the fires of grief. The book also allows for small, haunting details to punctuate the narrative. In one scene, Harry receives a package from Dumbledore, Sirius's mirror, meant for communication. The realization that Sirius had planned for them to be able to talk, and that Harry had forgotten about it, cuts deeply. he smashes the mirror in anger and regret. It is a quiet but devastating moment that shows how grief often resurfaces in unexpected ways. This subplot is almost entirely absent in the films, stripping away a layer of painful irony and missed opportunity that defines Harry's mourning. The way the book integrates Sirius into Harry's inner life extends even into Deathly Hallows. When Harry walks into the forest to face Voldemort, Sirius appears from the Resurrection Stone, one of the few figures Harry asks to accompany him. "We are part of you," Sirius says in that spectral moment, affirming that his godfather's influence did not vanish with his body. In the films, Sirius appears too, but without the years of written evidence showing how much Harry carried him, the impact is dulled. For the book reader, this moment feels like a reunion long in the making. For the film viewer, it can feel like a cameo. Perhaps the deepest loss in the film portrayal is the absence of Harry's survivor's guilt in full force. In the book, the guilt becomes a motivator as well as a weight. It informs his decision to protect others at any cost, to keep his friends from making the same mistakes he did. His determination in later battles is fueled partly by the knowledge that he has already seen what happens when a moment's hesitation or a reckless choice goes wrong. The films allow Harry to be brave, but they rarely tie that bravery back to Sirius in any explicit way. By reducing Sirius's death to a single dramatic beat rather than a continuing presence in Harry's thoughts, the films change the emotional architecture of the story. In Rowling's version, grief is not a scene. It is a season that Harry must live through. It colors his relationships, his decisions, and his understanding of mortality. It is a weight he carries into every corridor of Hogwarts and every step beyond its walls. Without this long shadow, Harry's arc in the films feels cleaner, but also less human. The cost of war is there in broad strokes, but the fine lines of personal loss are blurred. In the end, the difference lies in endurance. The book makes Sirius a ghost that never quite leaves Harry's side, not in the literal sense, but in the way that memories and guilt inhabit the quiet corners of the mind. Every laugh remembered, every object inherited, every decision weighed against past mistakes. These are the threads that bind Sirius to Harry's story long after the veil has swallowed him. The films, for all their visual power, let those threads unravel too quickly, leaving only a snapshot of grief where the book gives a tapestry. Number 20. Relationship with Malfoy. In the pages of J.K. Rowling's books, the animosity between Harry Potter and Draco Malfoy grows like a coiled spring, tightening, twisting, sometimes snapping into open conflict, but never without moments of hesitation. From their first meeting on the Hogwarts Express in Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, where Malfoy's arrogance and prejudice are on full display, Harry marks him as an adversary. Yet Rowling doesn't keep them locked in a one-note rivalry. Through the books, their encounters gain layers. The insults and hexes are still there, but so are the glances across a crowded corridor, the moments of silent calculation, and the occasional, unexpected flashes of humanity. By Half-Blood Prince, Harry's obsession with Malfoy's activities begins to reveal something more than simple dislike. It becomes a study of an enemy who is also a frightened boy under crushing pressure. The most striking change between page and screen is how this complexity is handled. In the films, Draco is reduced to a series of sneers and passing confrontations, almost like a background antagonist who pops in to deliver a taunt before vanishing from the plot. The camera catches him in a handful of duels or hallway shoves, but the deeper, more ambiguous aspects of his character, particularly Harry's evolving perception of him, are barely acknowledged. A viewer unfamiliar with the books could easily assume their relationship is flat, hero versus bully, with nothing in between. This simplification robs one of the saga's most quietly powerful arcs. In the 6th book, the change is undeniable. Harry is convinced Malfoy is up to something dangerous, perhaps even connected to Voldemort himself. His suspicion isn't casual. It dominates his thoughts, colors his interactions with friends, and drives him to eavesdrop and stalk Draco across the castle. Yet even in his most suspicious moments, there are flashes of reluctant empathy. When Harry follows Draco into the bathroom and finds him sobbing, it isn't just a triumphant moment of catching his rival in weakness. Rowling writes it with jarring intimacy. His face was wet and he was talking to himself. "You're not doing what you're supposed to be doing," he said. This image of a boy unraveling under impossible orders pierces through the years of schoolyard rivalry. This bathroom encounter is pivotal in the books because it blends hostility with vulnerability. Harry still attacks, firing off Sectum Sempra in panic, but in the aftermath, the scene becomes less about their enmity and more about the damage both are suffering. Malfoy is left bleeding, terrified, and Harry, shaken by what he's done, is forced to face the fact that their battles are no longer harmless. In the film version, this moment is visually striking, but much of the emotional groundwork is absent. Without the months of Harry's obsessive tracking and internal conflict that Rowling lays out, the scene loses its layered impact. It becomes an action beat rather than a culmination of spiraling tension. The books also show Harry thinking about Draco at odd times, piecing together fragments of overheard conversation, wondering about his absences and noticing his physical decline. He remarks to Ron and Hermione about Malfoy looking ill and haunted, even if they dismiss it as paranoia. This ongoing surveillance isn't born of sympathy alone. It's tinged with fear, suspicion, and rivalry, but those elements merge into a portrait of two teenagers caught in opposite currents of the same war. It's a war that doesn't give them the luxury of being just schoolboys anymore. The films skim over this, reducing Malfoy's suffering to a few moments of pale, worried glances and one dramatic scene in the astronomy tower. Perhaps the most significant omission is how the books allow Harry's feelings toward Malfoy to evolve beyond open hostility. In Deathly Hallows, when the trio is captured and brought to Malfoy Manor, Draco is asked to identify Harry. He hesitates. The book makes it clear that Draco isn't eager to hand Harry over to Voldemort's followers. "I don't know," he mutters, and it's an astonishing beat of ambiguity. The boy who once boasted about seeing Harry expelled now falters when given the chance to destroy him. The films keep the hesitation, but without the years of complicated build-up, it reads as a small flicker rather than the outcome of a long, tangled history. Even earlier, in Half-Blood Prince, there is a telling scene in Madame Malkin's robes for all occasions, where Draco physically pulls himself away from confrontation when his mother reminds him they have more important things to do. This restraint is rare for him, and Harry notices it. Such subtle beats in the books contribute to the sense that Malfoy's mind is elsewhere, burdened by tasks too big for his years. Without them, the films lose a crucial sense of foreshadowing. Malfoy isn't simply avoiding Harry, he's drowning in his own mission. Rowling also plants small seeds of reluctant recognition between them. After Dumbledore's death, when Draco lowers his wand, allowing Snape to take over the fatal act, Harry recognizes that Malfoy couldn't go through with it. This is no act of redemption, but it is a fracture in the mask of cruelty that has defined him for years. The books linger here, allowing the reader to feel the shock of seeing Draco hesitate at the brink. The films keep the bare skeleton of the scene, but move past it quickly, more concerned with the action than the moral weight. In a war story, enemies are often painted in bold, unambiguous strokes. What Rowling does in the books is risk softening those lines, not to excuse Draco's behavior, but to remind us that even antagonists have breaking points and private fears. Harry's growing awareness of this truth makes him a sharper, more empathetic protagonist. He begins to see that the divisions between good and bad are sometimes a matter of circumstance and choice, not destiny. The films, by removing much of this internal observation, flatten that realization. Harry's world becomes simpler, but also less believable. One of the more quietly moving moments in the books comes in Deathly Hallows after the Battle of Hogwarts, when Harry chooses not to expose Draco's cowardice or failures. The war is over, the sides are clear, and yet there's no desire for vengeance. This quiet mercy speaks volumes about how far they've come from their first clash in the train compartment. In the films, this grace passes almost unnoticed, buried in the rush toward epilogue. It's also worth remembering that Rowling uses Harry's thoughts about Malfoy as a mirror for his own fears. Harry often wonders if he himself could be in Draco's position, forced into impossible decisions by outside forces, teetering between defiance and submission. These moments add moral texture to the narrative. The films, with their reduced focus on Harry's inner life, miss the chance to explore this self-reflection. Without it, the connection between hero and rival is one-dimensional. When the two face each other during the escape from the Room of Requirement in Deathly Hallows, the books frame it as more than a simple rescue. Harry saves Draco's life, pulling him from the flames, and in that moment, the act feels inevitable. Not because Harry has forgiven him, but because by now their story has outgrown the easy labels of enemy and friend. The films retain the rescue, but without the years of conflicted observation and reluctant understanding. It feels like a standard heroic gesture rather than the conclusion of a slow, painful shift in perception. Draco's arc, as written, is a reminder that people can be trapped by the expectations of family and the coercion of power. Harry's changing attitude toward him is one of the series' most human threads. By choosing to pare down their interactions to the bare bones of taunts and fights, the films sacrifice a chance to show the audience how an enemy can be understood without being redeemed. It's a lesson that fits naturally into the moral heart of the books, but fades into the background on screen. The rivalry between Harry and Draco was never meant to be clean or static. It spiraled, contracted, and twisted back on itself over the years, shaped by circumstances neither boy controlled. In the books, Rowling allows us to watch that process unfold in glances, in overheard words, in the way Harry starts to see the cracks in Draco's polished cruelty. The films, constrained by time and perhaps wary of muddying the waters, skim over those shadows. What remains is still entertaining, but it is not the full story that the pages reveal so carefully. Number 21. Magical skills beyond spells. In the pages of J.K. Rowling's books, Harry Potter was never simply a boy who shouted spells and watched them fly. His victories were often the result of quick thinking, resourcefulness, and an uncanny ability to use his environment to his advantage. One of the earliest and most vivid examples appears in his first year, during the confrontation with the mountain troll in Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. While the film shows him rather haplessly climbing onto the troll's shoulders before shoving his wand into its nose, the book describes a more deliberate plan. Harry seizes the troll's attention to protect Hermione, using his agility to scramble onto its back and create a distraction so Ron can successfully cast Wingardium Leviosa. It's a small but telling difference. On the page, Harry is not just surviving, he is orchestrating a moment that gives his friend the chance to act. This skill for thinking beyond simple spellcasting comes up repeatedly in the books. In Chamber of Secrets, Harry faces the basilisk with the sword of Gryffindor, an item he has never seen before that appears to him in the most desperate moment. The film portrays the battle as a near miraculous victory, as if the sword alone turns the tide. But the novel shows Harry making a decisive choice. After being bitten, he stabs the basilisk through the mouth in a desperate, calculated strike, knowing that the venom is fatal, but that it is the only way to destroy it. He even uses the basilisk's fang to destroy Tom Riddle's diary, recognizing almost instantly that the diary is the real target. That awareness, the ability to identify the true source of danger, is a defining trait that the movies never fully explore. Harry's resourcefulness shines again in Prisoner of Azkaban when he and Hermione travel back in time. The book's Harry understands that he cannot simply run forward casting spells. He must work within the rules of the timeline to ensure events play out as they did before. Watching from the shadows, he realizes that the Patronus he thought had been cast by his father was, in fact, his own future self. Rowling writes, it was him. He had seen himself conjuring the Patronus before. This is not just a magical act, but a profound mental leap. The acceptance that he is the one who must act, without hesitation, in the exact right moment. The film includes the scene, but the subtle inner realization, the layering of thought and decision, is stripped away, leaving a simpler image of Harry producing a stag. The books also give Harry a distinctive skill in flying, which the films relegate to Quidditch sequences and a few chase scenes. In Philosopher's Stone, Professor McGonagall notices his instinctive control of a broomstick after he dives to catch Neville's Remembrall. She later tells Oliver Wood, "This boy's a natural." Throughout the series, Harry's flying is more than a sport. It is a survival tool. In Goblet of Fire, his ability to handle a broom under pressure saves him during the first Triwizard task. While the movie condenses this into a flashy dragon chase, the book emphasizes his planning, summoning his firebolt, controlling it with precision, and maneuvering in tight spaces to outwit a dangerous opponent. The focus is not just on the broom's speed, but on Harry's mind guiding it. Perhaps one of the clearest examples of Harry's cleverness outside of traditional spell duels comes in Goblet of Fire's second task. Lacking the magical skills of some of his competitors, Harry searches for alternative solutions. He experiments with different methods to breathe underwater, even turning to the library's restricted section for help. Ultimately, it is Dobby who delivers the gillyweed, but Harry's readiness to consider multiple approaches and act on them without delay is crucial. The movie makes this a passing plot point, but the book shows the mental process, the weighing of options, the willingness to try unorthodox methods that defines his style of problem-solving. The invisibility cloak is another tool that, in the novels, becomes a strategic extension of Harry's mind. In Order of the Phoenix, Harry uses it to sneak into Umbridge's office, retrieve information, and communicate with Sirius. These are not moments of flashy spellcasting, they are acts of stealth, planning, and execution. Rowling shows him timing his movements, anticipating where teachers will be, and improvising when things go wrong. In the films, the cloak is largely reduced to a gimmick for a few key scenes, stripping away the sense that Harry uses it as a constant tactical advantage. One of the most overlooked elements in the films is Harry's ability to inspire loyalty and coordinate with others during dangerous moments. In Order of the Phoenix, during the Battle of the Department of Mysteries, he works seamlessly with Hermione, Neville, Luna, Ginny, and Ron, giving quick instructions and making decisions on the fly. In the book, this is not about shouting Expelliarmus over and over. It's about moving as a unit, adapting to sudden changes in the fight, and using each person's strengths. The films reduce this to a chaotic exchange of spells, missing the quiet leadership Harry exerts in the heat of danger. The sixth book, Half-Blood Prince, offers one of Harry's most intricate examples of resourcefulness in the cave with Dumbledore. Faced with a magically protected basin, Harry follows Dumbledore's instructions to feed him the potion, but he also keeps his mind clear enough to react when the Inferi attack. The novel describes Harry summoning fire, remembering instantly that it is the one thing these creatures fear. It is a textbook example of his ability to act decisively under pressure, drawing on knowledge from his defense against the dark arts classes and prior encounters. The film includes the fire, but it comes across as Dumbledore's magic, not Harry's initiative. The final book, Deathly Hallows, turns Harry into a strategist on the run. When infiltrating the Ministry of Magic, he uses Polyjuice Potion not merely as a disguise, but as part of a layered plan, knowing where they need to go, anticipating patrols, and improvising when the plan breaks down. The book makes clear that these moments are tense and require constant recalibration. The film, in contrast, rushes through the infiltration as a montage of events, never letting the audience feel the mental strain Harry endures to keep himself and his friends safe. Even in the final battle, Harry's approach in the book is steeped in thought rather than raw magical power. His last confrontation with Voldemort is not a duel of strength, but of understanding. He has pieced together the truth about the Elder Wand's allegiance, using deduction more than spells to ensure victory. "You're the one who is wrong," he tells Voldemort, explaining how the wand's loyalty passed to him. This is a chess player's endgame, not a warrior's knockout punch. The film stages it as a dramatic explosion of magic, losing the intellectual element that Rowling carefully constructed. Rowling often sets up Harry's victories as a combination of magical skill and what might be called Muggle logic, the kind of thinking that comes from growing up outside the wizarding world. In Philosopher's Stone, for example, during the game of wizard's chess, Harry does not simply rely on Ron's instructions. He observes the board, notes the patterns, and understands that sacrifices are necessary to win. His willingness to step into danger, to be the piece that moves forward, is both brave and strategic. The films largely credit Ron with the win, underplaying Harry's role in understanding the plan. Another subtle example is found in Chamber of Secrets before the Basilisk battle. Harry realizes that Moaning Myrtle's death holds the key to the monster's identity. This leap is based on listening, piecing together clues and thinking like a detective, skills that have nothing to do with wand work. The film simplifies this revelation into a quicker scene, cutting short the sense of Harry as an investigator piecing together a dangerous puzzle. The books also give Harry a talent for improvisation during moments when magic fails or is impractical. In Prisoner of Azkaban, when confronted by Snape in the Shrieking Shack, Harry does not rely solely on spells. He uses the element of surprise, standing between Snape and Sirius, buying time for explanations. In the film, the moment is shorter, leaning on visual tension rather than the layered thinking and emotional stakes at play in the text. Throughout the novels, Harry's greatest power is not his magic, but his adaptability, a quality forged in the cupboard under the stairs and refined through each year at Hogwarts. Whether it is using a broomstick like an extension of his own body, turning an invisibility cloak into a shield of opportunity, or recognizing when the battle is won through words rather than wands, Harry is far more than the sum of his spells. The films, with their need for visual spectacle, often trade that adaptability for the simplicity of glowing jets of light, leaving audiences with a version of Harry that wins by magic alone rather than by the blend of wit, courage, and cunning that made him, in the books, a truly formidable wizard. Number 22. Value of friendship. In the pages of the books, friendship for Harry Potter unfolds as a web, not a triangle. From his earliest days at Hogwarts, J.K. Rowling draws him not as an isolated figure tethered solely to Ron Weasley and Hermione Granger, but as someone whose connections stretch far beyond them. In Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, Harry's support for Neville Longbottom is neither fleeting nor convenient. When Neville shyly offers Harry the gillyweed during the Triwizard Tournament, Harry later recalls with genuine warmth how Neville had been the one to save his neck in that moment. That gratitude is not portrayed as a one-off. Neville is present in the books as a consistent ally, someone Harry takes the time to acknowledge, even in small gestures like sitting with him at meals or defending him against casual cruelty from others. The books also show Harry's openness to people many others overlook. Luna Lovegood, with her eccentric beliefs and dreamy gaze, is often mocked by her peers, but Harry treats her with quiet respect from their first meaningful encounter in Order of the Phoenix. He does not see her as a novelty or a distraction, but as a person whose loyalty he comes to rely on. During the battle at the Department of Mysteries, when Luna fights alongside him, he recognizes her courage in the same breath as he praises Hermione or Ron. This ability to value someone without fitting them into the mold of his inner circle is part of the broader picture of friendship in the books, a picture where kindness is not rationed. Rowling's Harry also forms genuine ties with members of the Order of the Phoenix, bonds that go beyond mentorship or tactical alliances. His connection with Remus Lupin is not merely that of student and teacher. In Prisoner of Azkaban, when Lupin offers him insight into his parents' lives, Harry clings to those moments as precious, finding comfort in Lupin's calm wisdom. Similarly, his trust in Tonks, who treats him as an equal rather than a child, grows naturally in the pages. These relationships give Harry an expanded emotional support system, one that adds richness to his journey and underlines that friendship is often built in layers over time. Even his interactions with teachers outside his favourites show this openness. In Half-Blood Prince, Professor Slughorn becomes a part of Harry's network, not through blind admiration but through mutual respect. Slughorn's memory is essential to Harry's mission, but Harry also takes time to appeal to Slughorn's better nature, acknowledging his value as a person. The Harry of the books is willing to engage with authority figures even when they are flawed, creating bridges rather than burning them, and showing that respect can coexist with healthy skepticism. In contrast, the films narrow the lens almost entirely to Ron and Hermione. Moments that showcase Harry's broader friendships are often absent or reduced to background detail. The camaraderie with Neville is flattened, most notably in Goblet of Fire, where it is not Neville but Dobby who gives Harry the gillyweed, removing a subtle yet important layer of mutual support between the two boys. This change erases a small but telling example of how Harry notices and appreciates the help of someone outside his closest companions. Luna's significance in the films, while visually charming, is compressed into fewer interactions, making her feel more like an occasional whimsical presence than a trusted comrade. In the books, Luna is part of the group that Harry insists on bringing to the Ministry in Order of the Phoenix, and he explicitly defends her right to be there. In the films, her inclusion is more a matter of necessity than a personal choice, softening the intentionality behind Harry's recognition of her worth. This shift changes how we perceive his ability to look beyond social norms in choosing his allies. The omission of deeper connections with the Order members also limits the scope of Harry's world on screen. While the films capture his grief at Sirius's death, they do not linger on the quieter, continuing relationship with Lupin, which in the books becomes a steadying presence for him in the following year. The trust he places in Tonks too is barely hinted at, making her loss in the final battle less personal for the audience than it is in the novels. By stripping these threads, the films make Harry's network of emotional bonds seem thinner than it truly is. The teachers in the film adaptations are largely relegated to functional roles, sources of information or obstacles to overcome, rather than individuals with whom Harry builds rapport. Slughorn's arc is presented more as a plot device for obtaining the Horcrux memory than as an opportunity for Harry to show empathy and persuasion. The small, telling moments in the book, Harry choosing not to exploit Slughorn's weaknesses, appealing instead to his pride in teaching talented students, are absent, leaving less evidence of Harry's ability to treat people with dignity even when he needs something from them. In the books, these varied relationships shape Harry's understanding of loyalty and empathy. They also protect him from the insularity that can come from relying too heavily on a small group. For example, when Ron abandons him in Deathly Hallows, Harry's world does not collapse entirely because he still has Hermione, but also because he trusts others like Lupin, Bill Weasley, and even Aberforth Dumbledore to stand by him if needed. This resilience comes from years of cultivating bonds across different circles, each with its own foundation of mutual respect. The films, by contrast, make Ron and Hermione almost the sole pillars holding up Harry's emotional life. While this tight focus strengthens the portrayal of their trio, it unintentionally suggests that Harry's ability to value others is limited. It also removes opportunities to show his generosity toward people he might not see every day. Without Neville's gillyweed moment, without Luna's invitation to the Ministry as an act of faith, without the mentorship nuances with Lupin and Slughorn, the film Harry risks feeling more self-contained, less community-minded. What the books accomplish and the films dilute is the idea that friendship is not a finite resource. Harry's willingness to invest in people like Luna or Neville is never portrayed as a threat to his closeness with Ron and Hermione. Rather, it strengthens the group as a whole. This is a quiet but powerful lesson, one that becomes especially clear in Deathly Hallows when the final battle draws fighters from every corner of his life. Students, teachers, order members, even centaurs and house elves, all ready to stand with him because he has earned their trust. One of the most poignant examples comes after Dobby's death in Deathly Hallows. In the book, Harry takes the time to dig the grave by hand, not only out of grief, but out of respect for a friend whose loyalty transcended species and status. This is friendship in its purest form, valuing someone without concern for how others might perceive that bond. The films include Dobby's death, but do not dwell on Harry's act of manual labor, missing an opportunity to show his humility and capacity for deep gratitude beyond his human friends. The difference in scope between book and film friendships also affects how we see Harry as a leader. In the books, his ability to rally a diverse group for Dumbledore's army stems from trust he has already built with individuals across the school. His invitation to join is not just a recruitment pitch, it is backed by personal rapport with students from multiple houses. The films show DA meetings but give less attention to the groundwork of connection, making the group's cohesion seem more spontaneous than earned. By tightening the focus on the trio, the films inevitably reduce the texture of Hogwarts as a living, breathing community around Harry. The books remind us repeatedly that his victories are collective efforts, fueled by the loyalty of many. Harry's habit of noticing people, thanking them, defending them, seeking them out, is what makes those collective victories possible. The films preserve the heroism, but leave out much of the quiet groundwork that enables it. This narrowing of Harry's social world in the films changes the tone of his journey. In the books, even in his darkest moments, he is never entirely alone because he has planted seeds of friendship widely. In Order of the Phoenix, after his vision of Sirius being tortured, the swift readiness of Ginny, Luna, and Neville to follow him shows that his bonds go beyond habit. They are built on mutual courage. On screen, this readiness feels more like a plot necessity than the culmination of years of subtle kindness. Ultimately, the book version of Harry shows that friendship is not about the number of people you see every day, but about the care you extend to all who cross your path. The films, while faithful in many large strokes, lose much of this mosaic of connections, presenting a hero whose circle feels smaller and whose openness to different kinds of people is less visible. It is in those missing details, the gillyweed from Neville, the grave dug for Dobby, the deliberate inclusion of Luna, that the fuller truth of Harry's friendships lives, a truth that gives as much weight to the supporting threads as to the central ones. Number 23, attitude towards Slytherin. In the original books, Harry's relationship with Slytherin House is a slow-burning subplot that begins with fear and prejudice but evolves into a more layered, human understanding. In Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, his first real impression of Slytherin is shaped by Ron Weasley's warning that there's not a single witch or wizard who went bad who wasn't in Slytherin. This sweeping statement, fed to an 11-year-old, plants an immediate bias. The Sorting Hat's offer, "You could be great, you know, it's all here in your head, and Slytherin will help you on the way to greatness," is refused by a panicked Harry, who whispers desperately that he doesn't want to be in that house. The rejection is instinctive, based on what others have told him, rather than any direct experience. In the films, this same moment is reduced to a quick "not Slytherin," and the complexity of the Hat's reasoning, the idea that Harry possesses qualities Slytherin values, is brushed aside, leaving the audience with a simpler image. Slytherin equals bad, Gryffindor equals good. As the books progress, Rowling uses subtle encounters to challenge Harry's black and white view. One of the first cracks in his prejudice comes in Chamber of Secrets, when he learns he can speak Parseltongue. This talent is associated with Salazar Slytherin himself and is deeply feared. Ron's reaction, hearing voices no one else can hear, isn't a good sign, even in the wizarding world, unintentionally reinforces the stigma. But the truth is more complicated. The ability is neutral, not inherently evil. Harry begins to see that traits linked to Slytherin can exist outside of dark intentions. The films, however, frame this discovery almost as proof of something dangerous within Harry, emphasizing the shock and horror without following through on the nuance. There is no deeper conversation about how magic itself isn't moral or immoral, it's the choices behind it. By the time Goblet of Fire unfolds, the books start layering more empathy into Harry's view. The introduction of characters like Cedric Diggory from Hufflepuff blurs the idea that house rivalries define character entirely, but it's his brief interactions with Slytherins that matter here. Even someone as abrasive as Draco Malfoy is shown in moments of fear and vulnerability during the Triwizard Tournament. In the books, there are offhand remarks from other Slytherin students who don't echo Draco's malice, suggesting not everyone in the house shares his views. The films largely erase these subtler encounters, focusing on Malfoy as the voice and face of Slytherin. As a result, the audience is never invited to wonder about the quiet Slytherins in the background, the ones who aren't bullies or Death Eater sympathizers. In Order of the Phoenix, Rowling takes a risk by forcing Harry to work alongside Slytherins in Dumbledore's army recruitment attempts and during shared classes. There's a telling moment when he reflects that not all Slytherins were cheering during Umbridge's reign, and some even seemed uneasy with her methods. These tiny cracks in the wall of hostility are important. Harry notices them, even if he doesn't yet fully embrace them. The film adaptation skips almost all of this. It sharpens the edges of inter-house conflict, keeping the Slytherins neatly boxed into their antagonist role, led by Pansy Parkinson's sneers and Draco's taunts, without showing the quieter students whose loyalties or personalities might not align with the stereotype. One of the most transformative threads in the books is Harry's gradual realization that ambition and cunning, Slytherin trademarks, can be used for good. In Half-Blood Prince, his work with the potions textbook, once owned by the mysterious Half-Blood Prince, blurs moral boundaries. The prince's annotations are clever, effective, and sometimes morally questionable. When Harry learns the book belonged to Severus Snape, a Slytherin, it complicates his view. Snape's brilliance, resourcefulness, and ability to think ahead are all Slytherin traits. Harry begins to see that these qualities, when not twisted by cruelty, are powerful tools. The films flattened this revelation into a plot twist about Snape's identity, missing the richer thread of how it changes Harry's understanding of Slytherin. The climax of this evolution happens in Deathly Hallows, when Harry witnesses Snape's memories. The boy who once saw Slytherin as the enemy learns that the bravest man he ever knew not only belonged to that house but embodied its strengths: loyalty to a cause, mastery of deception for survival, and unwavering determination. Harry's final words about Snape, "One of them was a Slytherin and he was probably the bravest man I ever knew," are a clear rejection of his childhood prejudice. In the films, while the line is included, the groundwork for its emotional impact is weaker. Without the earlier book-based developments, it feels more like an isolated tribute rather than the culmination of a years-long change in perspective. Rowling also plants smaller seeds of this growth in unexpected places. In the books, Slughorn's introduction in Half-Blood Prince is vital. Horace Slughorn is a Slytherin who is openly proud of his house, yet he is warm, sociable, and protective of his students. His ambition manifests in networking and collecting talented witches and wizards, but it's not malicious. Harry's acceptance of Slughorn challenges his own assumptions. In the films, Slughorn retains some charm, but his Slytherin identity is barely acknowledged, depriving viewers of another chance to see the house in a positive light. Even Harry's relationship with Draco undergoes subtle shifts in the books. By Deathly Hallows, after saving Draco's life during the Battle of Hogwarts, Harry no longer sees him purely as an adversary. The tension remains, but it is tinged with mutual recognition of survival and shared danger. In the films, this complexity is minimal, with only fleeting glances hinting at anything beyond rivalry. The decision not to explore Draco's arc in depth weakens the idea that Harry has grown beyond his early biases. The Sorting Hat's warning in the first book, that the qualities of Slytherin live within Harry, becomes a quiet truth in the novels. Time and again, he uses cunning, calculated risks and determination to achieve his goals. His infiltration of the Ministry, his decision to use Polyjuice Potion, and his planning for the Gringotts break-in are all executed with Slytherin-level resourcefulness. The books allow the reader to connect these dots, realizing that Harry's success often comes from the very traits he once feared. In the films, these actions are framed more as Gryffindor bravery, overlooking the Slytherin influence entirely. One particularly striking omission in the films is the epilogue moment where Harry tells his son, Albus Severus, that being sorted into Slytherin would be nothing to fear. In the book, this reassurance is the ultimate evidence of his growth. Harry says, "The bravest man I ever knew was a Slytherin." It is a conscious dismantling of the prejudice he once held. The films include the line, but without the layered journey shown in the books, it feels like a sentimental flourish rather than a heartfelt truth shaped by years of change. This change of heart in the novels isn't sudden. It is earned through repeated challenges to Harry's assumptions, encounters with characters like Slughorn, observations of Slytherins who resist villainy, and the recontextualization of Snape's life create a believable arc. It reflects a broader message about prejudice, that it often starts with second-hand opinions and fades only through personal experience and empathy. The films, by simplifying Slytherin into a convenient antagonist, lose this moral lesson. The absence of this nuance in the films has consequences for how audiences perceive the Harry Potter world. Readers leave the books with the understanding that Hogwarts houses are not moral categories, but collections of traits that can be used for good or ill. Film viewers, especially younger ones, may come away with a more binary view. Gryffindor is the hero's house, Slytherin is the villain's. This undermines one of the series' quieter but more profound themes, that people are more than the labels assigned to them. In truth, the Harry of the books learns that his own survival depended on embracing qualities from every house: courage from Gryffindor, loyalty from Hufflepuff, wisdom from Ravenclaw, and yes, ambition and cunning from Slytherin. The ability to see value in traits once dismissed as dangerous or unworthy is part of his maturation. In the cinematic version, Harry's journey is still heroic, but it lacks this subtle self-awareness. The filmmakers chose spectacle over slow, moral evolution, and something essential was lost. Had the films leaned into this thread, moments like Snape's reveal or the Albus Severus conversation would have carried more weight. Viewers would have recognized them not as isolated emotional beats, but as the payoff to a long internal journey. Instead, the Slytherin storyline is treated like an early game obstacle Harry outgrows simply by ignoring it, rather than by confronting and understanding it. This makes the on-screen Hogwarts a less complex, less realistic world than the one in the books. The difference matters because it shifts the series' thematic center. In Rowling's original narrative, overcoming bias is as much a victory as defeating Voldemort. The war is fought not only with wands but with hearts and minds, and Harry's acceptance of Slytherin is a small but meaningful part of that battle. The films tell a simpler story where the enemy is external and the moral lines are clearly drawn. But in life, as in the books, the harder battle is often with the beliefs we carry about others and the courage to change them. Number 24, Influence of Dumbledore. In the pages of J.K. Rowling's books, Albus Dumbledore emerges as a man whose wisdom is undeniable yet far from flawless, a mentor who inspires but also frustrates, a leader revered yet burdened with secrets. For Harry, this realization is not immediate. At 11, when he first meets Dumbledore in the Great Hall, he sees him through the wide-eyed wonder of a boy who has just stepped into a world of magic. But by the final book, Harry's vision has sharpened. He no longer sees a saint carved from marble, but a man of flesh and blood, capable of mistakes, misjudgments, and moral compromises. The films, however, pare away much of this complexity, giving us a version of Dumbledore who is closer to the archetype of the untouchable wise old mentor, a figure less haunted by moral ambiguity. This shift alters the emotional weight of Harry's journey, particularly in his final year, when the truth about Dumbledore's past rises to the surface. One of the starkest examples of this difference comes in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. In the book, Harry spends much of his time wrestling with conflicting emotions about Dumbledore. After learning from Rita Skeeter's sensationalized biography, The Life and Lies of Albus Dumbledore, that the headmaster had once befriended Gellert Grindelwald and flirted with dangerous ideas about wizarding dominance, Harry feels betrayed. He changed, though, didn't he? Harry wonders, yet doubt lingers. The boy who had once clung to Dumbledore's every word now must reconcile the man he knew with the man he is only beginning to understand. Films touch on these revelations, but they skim past the internal conflict. Without Harry's long nights by the campfire, turning over Skeeter's words in his mind and feeling the sting of incomplete truths, the audience is given little chance to see him truly grapple with the flaws of his greatest mentor. This softening of Dumbledore's complexity is also evident in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. In the book, Dumbledore deliberately avoids Harry for months, fearing that Voldemort's mental connection to him could be exploited. Yet for Harry, this absence feels like abandonment. His anger boils over in Dumbledore's office after the battle at the Department of Mysteries, when he finally confronts the man he once idolized. "I cared about you too much," Dumbledore admits in the book, a rare confession that reveals both his affection and his capacity for error. The film includes the avoidance, but not the same raw emotional payoff. The confrontation is shortened, the words gentler, and the sting of Harry's sense of betrayal dulled. The cinematic Dumbledore maintains his aura, where the literary one momentarily stumbles. Rowling also crafts a Dumbledore who manipulates Harry, not out of malice, but because he believes the ends justify the means. In Half-Blood Prince, Dumbledore is not simply sharing memories with Harry to satisfy curiosity. He is shaping the boy's understanding, preparing him for the inevitable moment when he must face Voldemort. The revelation in the book that Harry was always meant to die, "You are the seventh Horcrux, Harry," is given its weight. Precisely because readers have seen how Dumbledore has steered him toward this path without revealing the full cost. In the film, this manipulation is smoothed over. The line is still there, but without the build-up of quiet orchestration and withheld truths, the audience feels less of the sting that Harry experiences. The death of Dumbledore in Half-Blood Prince is another moment where the difference in portrayal changes the impact. In the book, Harry's grief is complicated. It is not only sorrow for the loss of his headmaster, but also an aching awareness that there were questions left unanswered, truths left unexplained. Rowling lingers on Harry's thoughts as he gazes at the white tomb, feeling both the weight of what he has lost and the burden of what he must now do alone. The film captures the sadness visually, the wands raised in tribute, but it glosses over the tangled emotions that come with losing a mentor whose full truth Harry has yet to uncover. Perhaps the most profound divergence between book and film lies in the Deathly Hallows, when Harry walks toward his own death. In the book, he remembers Dumbledore's words, weighs them against his own understanding, and chooses to act not because he blindly obeys Dumbledore's plan, but because he has made peace with it. His choice is informed by the journey from idealizing Dumbledore to forgiving him. "I am about to die," Harry thinks, and in that moment, he forgives Dumbledore for the manipulations, the secrets, the half-truths, It is the culmination of a long, difficult reconciliation. The film retains the sacrifice but removes much of the reconciliation. The audience sees a boy ready to die, but not one who has walked the intricate emotional path of forgiveness. The books give Dumbledore shadows, reminders that even the greatest wizards carry burdens of guilt and regret. His sister Ariana's tragic death, the rift with his brother Aberforth, and his youthful entanglement with Grindelwald are not mere biographical footnotes. They shape his choices, his fears, and his hesitations. Rowling uses these to deepen Harry's understanding that no one, no matter how powerful, is free from the weight of past mistakes. In the films, these elements are touched upon but never lingered on. Without seeing Harry wrestle with them, the audience is left with a cleaner image of Dumbledore, one that loses the richness of the literary version. There is also the matter of tone. Book Dumbledore often allows himself moments of vulnerability, moments that pierce the myth and reveal the man. His admission in The Half-Blood Prince, "I'm not worried, Harry, I'm with you," is not just reassurance. It is a rare acknowledgement that he draws strength from Harry too. The film keeps the line but frames it as the master comforting the student, missing the mutuality that Rowling infuses into the scene. That mutuality is key to understanding why Harry can eventually forgive him. In the written saga, Dumbledore's flaws do not diminish his greatness. They make it more human and thus more inspiring. Harry's journey from adoration to disillusionment to forgiveness mirrors a universal coming-of-age truth, the realization that our heroes are imperfect. By stripping away much of that middle stage, the films risk presenting a mentor who is less a person and more a symbol. Symbols are powerful, but they do not invite the same kind of intimate emotional investment that complex characters do. Consider the King's Cross chapter in the Deathly Hallows. In the book, this liminal space becomes a place for Harry to finally question Dumbledore directly, to hear him speak of love, loss, and failure with unvarnished honesty. "Do not pity the dead, Harry, pity the living, and above all, those who live without love," Dumbledore says, but he also admits his own failings in chasing power and ignoring the needs of his family. This scene allows Harry to see the man in full. The film preserves the setting and some of the dialogue, but trims much of the self-reflection, leaning toward an ethereal mentor imparting final wisdom rather than a flawed man laying himself bare. Even earlier in the series, the seeds of complexity are sown. In the Philosopher's Stone, when Dumbledore tells Harry it does not do to dwell on dreams and forget to live, it is a piece of wisdom that feels universal. But as the books progress, these words gain irony. Harry realizes Dumbledore himself has sometimes been guilty of dwelling on his sister's death, on his youthful mistakes, making the advice more layered. In the films, this irony is left unexplored, and the line remains simply a wise man's maxim. By Goblet of Fire, the books show Dumbledore making strategic decisions that place Harry in danger, trusting that it will lead to the boy's growth and survival. His choice to let Harry face the Triwizard Tournament tasks is a calculated risk, and while he supports Harry, he does not shield him. In the book, this decision is tinged with moral weight. In the film, it plays more like a challenge from a benevolent mentor. The difference is subtle but significant. It is the difference between seeing a leader wrestle with the ethics of his choices and seeing a figure who always appears sure of himself. Harry's eventual forgiveness of Dumbledore is one of the quiet triumphs of the book series. It is not born of forgetting the pain or erasing the flaws, but of accepting them. In choosing to forgive, Harry steps out of the shadow of the man he once worshipped and into his own identity. It is a deeply human resolution, and one that the films, with their streamlined portrayal, cannot fully deliver. This is why, for readers, Dumbledore remains one of the most fascinating characters in the series. He is not the infallible wizard of legend, but a man whose brilliance coexists with deep personal failure. For Harry, understanding this is a rite of passage. For audiences who only watch the films, that rite is incomplete. They see the legend but not the layers beneath, the plan but not the price paid by the man who made it. And without those layers, the story of Harry Potter loses a measure of its hard-earned emotional truth. Number 25. Interest in magical creatures. In the pages of J.K. Rowling's books, Harry's fascination with magical creatures is one of those subtle threads that quietly shapes his character. From the very first time he steps into the wizarding world, his encounters with these beings are marked by an openness and curiosity that set him apart. When Hagrid brings him into the Forbidden Forest in Philosopher's Stone and they meet the injured unicorn, Harry is captivated, not frightened. The narrative lingers on his sensory impressions, the silver blood, the hushed air of the trees, and the way Harry instinctively respects the solemnity of the moment. This early scene plants the seed of his appreciation for magical creatures as more than just curiosities. To him, they are living symbols of the wizarding world's depth. That trait blooms in Prisoner of Azkaban when he first meets Buckbeak, the proud hippogriff whose gaze demands respect. Rowling's description is deliberate. Harry bows, maintains eye contact, and only approaches after receiving permission. In the book, the moment is not merely a test of nerve, it is a moment of connection. Harry felt a strange kind of pride when Buckbeak allows him to stroke his feathers. It is telling that Harry doesn't treat this as an exotic thrill. Instead, he treats Buckbeak like an equal. The book allows this bond to grow over multiple scenes, from the initial flight over the lake to Harry's fierce determination to help save the creature from execution. It becomes clear that for Harry, defending Buckbeak is not about defying authority for its own sake, but about protecting a being he has come to admire. The films, while including the key moment of Buckbeak's introduction, strip away much of this ongoing connection. Buckbeak appears in a few scenes, primarily as a plot device tied to Sirius Black's escape. The layers of Harry's interest, how he notices Buckbeak's temperament, or how he processes the injustice of the execution, are reduced to brief glances and rushed lines. What is lost is the quiet persistence of Harry's empathy, the way he invests time in understanding a creature's nature. The book makes you believe Harry might have become a magical creature expert had life taken a different path. The film makes the meeting feel like a short-lived adventure. A similar gap opens when we consider Harry's relationship with Thestrals in Order of the Phoenix. In the book, his first glimpse of these skeletal, winged horses is soaked in mystery and unease. He notices them drawing the carriages, their leathery skin, their reptilian faces, but once Luna Lovegood explains that only those who have seen death can perceive them, Harry's interest shifts from fear to understanding. He listens as Luna describes them as lovely, and later, in the Forbidden Forest, he observes how they respond to gentleness and patience. Rowling even shows him feeding them raw meat and noting the delicacy with which they take it from his hands. These moments are not filler. They illustrate Harry's ability to overcome instinctive fear with curiosity, to accept the strange as worthy of care. The films condense this arc almost to a whisper. The Thestrals appear, are briefly explained, and then serve as transportation to the Ministry of Magic. Harry's quiet time with them, his internal shift from wariness to affection, is absent. In doing so, the adaptation removes an entire layer of his growth. The audience misses the chance to see him engage with the creatures on their terms, learning about them through direct experience rather than exposition. Without this, Harry's world feels smaller, less interconnected with the magical environment around him. One of the most charming, but often overlooked aspects of Harry's character in the books is his attention to the everyday creatures that inhabit the wizarding world. He doesn't just engage with the grand, dangerous beasts, he notices the smaller wonders too. In Goblet of Fire, during the Triwizard Tournament, his reaction to the dragons in the first task is not just fear of the challenge, they fascinate him. Even while under threat, he takes in their size, their colours, the way they move. He compares the Hungarian horntail's talons to swords, its eyes to molten gold. This descriptive attention shows a mind tuned to observation, a student of the magical living world even in moments of peril. Yet in the film adaptation, the dragon encounter becomes an adrenaline-fueled chase sequence. While visually spectacular, it shifts focus entirely to the action. The sensory detail, the smells, textures, and awe is sacrificed. Harry's fascination is replaced by sheer survival instinct. The result is that the audience doesn't see him as someone who might pause to appreciate a creature, even when it poses danger. Instead, he becomes a standard action hero facing an obstacle, losing the unique shade of curiosity that marks his book counterpart. In the books, Harry's willingness to learn about magical creatures often draws him closer to people who share that passion. His friendship with Hagrid is built partly on this common ground. Hagrid's enthusiasm for everything from Norbert the Norwegian Ridgeback to the blast-ended Scroots finds a sympathetic ear in Harry. Even when Hermione groans and Ron recoils, Harry is the one who tries to understand why Hagrid is excited. In Goblet of Fire, when Hagrid invites the trio to see the Scroots, Harry asks questions about their care, even though he's wary of their stingers. His curiosity is not naive, he recognizes danger, but he approaches it with an openness that respects Hagrid's love for the creatures. This subtle link between creature care and human connection is largely absent in the films. While Hagrid's menagerie is present, Harry's role in engaging with it is diminished. He is more often a bystander to Hagrid's lessons rather than an active participant. Without these interactions, a small but meaningful aspect of Harry's loyalty and empathy fades from view. The audience sees him as loyal to friends, yes, but misses how that loyalty extends to the creatures his friends care about. Even when the books portray magical creatures as threatening, Harry's reactions are nuanced. In Chamber of Secrets, his encounter with Aragog is tense, but after hearing the spider's account of the events leading to Hagrid's expulsion, Harry doesn't leave thinking only of his own narrow escape. He processes the conversation, weighing the creature's perspective against the danger it posed. This ability to hold two truths at once, that a creature can be both dangerous and unjustly maligned, is part of what makes him a more layered protagonist. It is a lesson he applies later, whether dealing with thestrals, centaurs, or even house elves. By contrast, in the films, Aragog is simply a monster in a horror sequence. The eerie conversation is shortened, the moral complexity evaporates. Harry runs, the audience feels relief, and the scene closes without reflection. That difference, small in isolation, contributes to a larger shift. The Harry of the films becomes less of an explorer of magical life and more of a reactor to magical threats. Another telling omission comes in the handling of the centaurs. In the Order of the Phoenix novel, Harry has multiple interactions with them, observing how they value astronomy, prophecy, and the balance of the forest. His respect for their culture, even when they are aloof or hostile, reinforces his broader pattern of engaging with magical beings on their own terms. Firenze's decision to teach at Hogwarts is framed in part through Harry's perspective, as he recognizes the courage it takes for a centaur to defy his herd. This awareness positions Harry as someone who understands that magical creatures have politics and principles of their own. In the films, the centaur's role is pared down to moments of conflict. They emerge from the trees, threaten Umbridge, and vanish. Harry's prior knowledge of their society, his understanding of their motivations, and his capacity to navigate those tensions are erased. Without that, the richness of the magical ecosystem is reduced, and so is Harry's place within it. There is also the matter of how the books use these creature encounters to mirror Harry's internal growth. In Goblet of Fire, facing the merpeople during the second task forces him to balance the tournament's competitive pressure against his instinct to protect. He chooses to rescue not only Ron, his assigned hostage, but also Gabrielle Delacour. While the merpeople are not hostile, the tension of the underwater setting and their watchful presence frames Harry's choice as one that values life over victory. This is not simply bravery, it is a deep-seated moral code that often surfaces when magical creatures are involved. The film captures the rescue but trims the decision-making. The urgency is conveyed through music and movement, not through the moral calculus visible in the book. The audience loses the sense that Harry's relationship with magical creatures informs his ethics, teaching him that the magical world is a web of lives, not a stage for personal glory. Perhaps one of the quietest, yet most telling differences is how often the books show Harry asking questions. Whether it is Hagrid, Luna, or Professor Grubbly Plank, he seeks out knowledge about creatures without needing it for immediate survival. These inquiries build his understanding and deepen his connection to the world. In Half-Blood Prince, even amidst the chaos of Horcrux hunting, he notices the owls behaving strangely before Dumbledore's death, reading it as a sign of shifting tides in the magical realm. This awareness is part of the same attentiveness that led him to value Buckbeak and Thestrals years earlier. The films, aiming for pace, rarely pause for Harry to seek out this kind of detail. Creature encounters are framed as challenges or spectacles, their educational value left to the margins. The result is a Harry who seems less attuned to the pulse of the magical world, less likely to notice its subtle signs. Taken together, these differences reshape Harry's portrayal. In the books, his interest in magical creatures is not a side note, it is part of his identity, reflecting his empathy, curiosity, and willingness to engage with what is different. In the films, with most of these smaller moments stripped away, that part of him fades into the background, leaving viewers with a hero defined more by battles than by the quiet, attentive wonder that made him such a compelling presence in Rowling's pages. Number 26. Sense of humour in hard times. In the pages of J.K. Rowling's books, Harry Potter's wit often flickered like a candle in the darkest of rooms, offering moments of relief when fear and uncertainty were at their peak. His humour was never about trivializing danger, rather it was a lifeline, a thread connecting him to his friends and grounding them all when the weight of the situation threatened to crush their spirits. In these instances, Harry's personality felt fully formed, layered, human, and relatable. It was the sort of humour that isn't scripted or rehearsed, but springs naturally from someone who has grown used to danger and learned how to navigate it without losing himself. One of the clearest examples of this comes in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, when Harry, Ron, and Hermione are captured by Snatchers and dragged to Malfoy Manor. As they are questioned about their identities, Harry, his face swollen from a stinging hex, tells them his name is Vernon Dudley. It is an absurd lie, obviously cobbled together from the names of his uncle and cousin, yet it carries an odd spark of defiance. This was not the smirk of someone making light of the situation, but the calculated humour of a boy refusing to let his captors see fear. It was Rowling's way of showing that even in moments of peril, Harry could summon a flash of cheek that reminded both himself and the reader that he still had fight in him. The films, however, stripped away much of this subtle resilience. In David Yates's cinematic version of the scene, there is no oddball name, no moment where Harry's humour interrupts the tension. Instead, the mood remains uniformly grim, the humour absent. Daniel Radcliffe's Harry stands silent, guarded, and stoic, a choice that makes sense for building suspense, but one that erases the flash of humanity Rowling wove into the scene. The Harry of the books might be battered and terrified, but he still meets danger with a crooked grin. The Harry of the films is a soldier, already consumed by the war. This difference was not limited to high-stakes moments. In Harry Potter and The Prisoner of Azkaban book, Harry, after narrowly escaping the Dementors on the train, remarks dryly about the great first day back at Hogwarts. The sarcasm is light, but it becomes a small anchor for the reader, showing that Harry has an ability to diffuse his own fear with humour. It's not a joke designed to get a laugh, it's a mental tactic to keep himself from spiralling. The film version, however, trades this quick wit for a straightforward portrayal of Harry as stunned and silent. The audience gets the sense that Harry is overwhelmed, and he is, but the resilience shown through that sardonic remark vanishes. The most glaring omission comes in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, during the tense moments before Harry's hearing at the Ministry. In the book, when Mr. Weasley warns Harry not to lose his temper, Harry responds with a wry comment about being as sweet as he can possibly be. It's a throwaway line, yet it's also a deliberate moment where Rowling softens the oppressive tension, giving Harry a chance to assert some control. This is the kind of humor forged under pressure, an instinct that helps people endure situations where everything is stacked against them. In the movie, the exchange is gone. Instead, Harry walks in with a somber expression and says nothing, the silence reinforcing the image of him as burdened and joyless. Even in earlier books, when the dangers were less immediate, Harry's humor in tense moments was part of his charm. In the Goblet of Fire, when facing the first Triwizard task, he tries to lighten the mood for Hermione by joking about his odds against the Hungarian horntail. "I suppose I could always feed myself to it, save it the trouble of chasing me." The humor is dark, but it is also a coping mechanism, one that reveals how Harry channels his fear into something constructive, connection with his friends. In the film, this moment is shifted entirely toward action and fear, cutting away the chance for Harry to express that balance between dread and defiance. These choices in adaptation altered not only how individual scenes played, but also how Harry's character was perceived overall. In the books, his wit in difficult moments showed that he was not merely a passive figure swept along by fate. He was an active participant in his own survival, finding ways to resist not just physically, but emotionally. Humor became one of his shields, as essential as his wand. In the films, the loss of these moments made him seem more like a somber protagonist, moving grimly from crisis to crisis, his humanity distilled primarily into his expressions of grief or determination. The omission of these humorous moments also affected the dynamics between Harry and other characters. In Half-Blood Prince, when Dumbledore tells Harry they must persuade Horace Slughorn to return to teaching, Harry's first reaction is to comment dryly on their brilliant plan of just showing up unannounced. The remark invites Dumbledore into a shared joke, a momentary alliance in the face of an unpredictable challenge. This humor not only breaks the tension, but also cements their relationship as one that allows for lightness amid danger. In the film, their exchange is stripped of this playful undertone, reducing the encounter to a straightforward mission briefing. This isn't to say the films completely erased Harry's humor. Moments like his awkward, sarcastic quip to Professor Snape in Half-Blood Prince about being a little behind in class do exist. But these instances are rare, and often the humor is shifted to other characters, especially Ron. In the books, Ron's humor is often more overt and comedic, while Harry's is understated, situational, and often tinged with irony. By giving Ron most of the comedic beats in the films, the adaptations unintentionally flattened Harry's emotional range, making him seem more reactive and less nuanced. The result is that film audiences miss out on a key part of Harry's coping strategies. In the books, his ability to make a dry comment in the face of adversity is a form of control, a way to assert that he will not be defined solely by the danger he's in. In Deathly Hallows, when they are planning to break into Gringotts, Harry jokes about being a bit rusty at bank robbery. It's a reminder that he is still, underneath everything, a teenager who can find absurdity in the impossible. The film treats the scene with unbroken seriousness, and the absurdity is lost. This difference has a cumulative effect. In the novels, readers follow a character whose humanity is reinforced not just by his bravery or moral compass, but by his ability to keep his sense of humor alive when it would be easiest to let it die. That balance makes Harry relatable, even aspirational. In the films, the emphasis shifts toward depicting him as a stoic figure, a symbol of resistance. The Harry of the screen carries the weight of the world visibly on his shoulders, while the Harry of the books hides some of that weight behind a crooked grin. There is also something uniquely powerful about the way humor works in life-threatening situations. It's a tool soldiers use in wartime, a mechanism for those in crisis to remind themselves they're still human. Rowling understood this and built it into Harry's character. The film's removal of many of these moments makes him less representative of the real resilience people show in the face of fear. Viewers are left with a hero who suffers and fights but doesn't always use the small weapons, like humor, make such battles survivable. The change also alters how the audience experiences the tone of the story. The books can move from deadly serious to lightly humorous in the space of a sentence, and Harry is often the pivot point for that shift. His ability to do this doesn't undercut the seriousness of the plot. Instead, it heightens it by contrast. Without that balance, the films often feel heavier, their darkness unbroken, which can make Harry's victories seem less like moments of relief and more like brief pauses in a relentless march toward the inevitable. What the films gained in cinematic tension, they lost in the complex portrayal of a boy who could laugh, sometimes bitterly, sometimes sincerely, in the shadow of death. By muting this aspect of Harry's character, the adaptations gave audiences a version of the boy who lived, who was defined more by the battles he fought than by the way he faced them. In Rowling's pages, the humor was never just a joke, it was a heartbeat in the dark, proof that Harry Potter was still alive, still himself, even when the world tried to strip everything else away.